but I want to say it's for him. And now in my mind, I'm like, well, I don't know now, because it could be le, it could be
Low. It could be low.
I don't know how far to take it before it's like, dude, you sound ridiculous. Like, you're pushing it too far. And you're trying too much on the accent part. But at the same time, if you don't, you're never going to get there, right?
No, it's a good question. I think it's really important to not have shame when you're trying to improve your accent, and you need to imitate people. I think you'd probably much rather sound, instead of like, yo soy un gringo, it's like, yo soy un gringo, blah, blah. Like, you'd much rather sound like that. Okay, so let's quickly move on to this then. When we have two object pronouns together, remember, indirect object pronoun comes before the direct object pronoun. Sometimes if we're using le or les, we have to turn it into se. Okay, so anytime we use le and les, and we also have a direct object pronoun, we have to turn it into that little disgusting, ugly word, se. Okay, and a lot of students get confused by se because it's not only used in this sense. Okay, like for example, you hear it in se habla, se vende, that kind of idea. Now, if you can see highlighted here, we have celo, cela, celos, celas. Now, while you might not be using this super frequently, you will probably come across it and you will want to know how to do it. So looking at number 12, yo le compro el libro. Okay, so once again, this is the direct object because it's being directly affected by the verb compro. And we have le because this person, we don't know if it's he, she, or usted. We don't know because we don't have context. Now, this le becomes se because you can't say yo le lo compro because this is just the way it is. It's just the rules. Because it sounds weird, maybe it's a little tongue twister. Who knows? It's just the rules. So we say yo se lo compro. Now, once again, this can get confusing because se, this little word, is now all of a sudden representing le and les. And le and les in it of themselves can be confusing because le can represent él, ella, usted, and les can represent ellos, ellas, ustedes, which is why it can get a little confusing.
When we are switching it to se, because you have lo or la, los, las after it, do we still find that? Because to me, it seems like you would, right? Like you would still want that kind of qualifier or that extra little bit of information. Does it kind of stay the same? Like it doesn't, le is still le, even though it's kind of hiding behind se. It still has that ambiguity, right? Like we don't really know. So let's clarify it by adding something at the end.
Good question. It's once again, it comes down to personal preference. So I could say tú se la das, or I could say tú se la das a tus amigos, which kind of makes the se redundant, but it does provide more context. All right, so how are you feeling on this?
I am going to take what we talked about here, and I think this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a story to myself or about something, and I'm going to use as many object and indirect object pronouns as I can so that it doesn't sound so weird coming out. Because coming out of my own mouth, it sounds so weird. But, when you make that switch to like, okay, I'm going to just start really speaking every day in Spanish. I feel like sometimes, I know we're switching subject here. So if you want to go back to the other thing, we can. I just thought this was interesting because when we're talking about accent, I think I could maybe sound more authentic, but I don't know how far to take it before it's like, dude, you sound ridiculous. Like you're pushing it too far. And you're trying too much on the accent part. But at the same time, if you don't, you're never going to get there, right?
No, it's a good question. I think it's really important to not have shame when you're trying to improve your accent, and you need to imitate people. Like you really do need to try and imitate how people sound. Don't think, oh, I'm taking this too far, whatever. Like I think you'd probably much rather sound, instead of like yo soy un gringo, it's like yo soy un gringo, blah blah. Like you'd much rather sound like that. I always tell students when it comes to improving your accent, there's kind of like the three keys. It's like getting the vowel sounds down, a, e, I, o, u. You get those down really, really well, your accent is like going to be 10 times better. It sounds so simple, and it is, but that really helps. Listening a lot and then speaking a lot. It's really that simple. Don't feel weird about like, oh, I feel like I'm pushing it. I shouldn't no, it's like you want to try to imitate people. That's really important.
I'm sure I'm going to pick up on the slang and the cadence of speaking and whatnot, and it's just going to naturally happen. I'm not necessarily trying to be them or act a certain way. It's just kind of a natural thing, and the culture, the language, it all kind of works together to create that accent. And so I think it's important. I think it's something that you have to do. But even though I know that, it's still, I have you to thank for that, because I joined your Discord and there's some fantastic people on there, man. Like the community on there is so awesome. Everybody's so nice. and welcoming. And it's like, this is funny. The first day I joined a Discord, there was somebody in the voice chat, and I'm like, I want to join, but no, I can't. Like, what if they can speak really good and I can barely say anything? I don't want to, I didn't. And I was like, man, the next day I was like, no, I'm not doing that again. And I joined it. And dude, now it's like, I had a fantastic conversation. And now I talk to this person every day. Having that community where you can be with other people that are learning, even people with advanced Spanish speaking abilities, it's fantastic.
A huge thing, like you said, is a mental part of the learning process. And students always come to me and they say like, Nate, I just want to have conversations with people, but like I'm really bad at speaking. Like I can understand better than I can speak. It's like a very common phrase I hear. Oh, I can understand better than I can speak. And I'm like, okay, how often are you speaking? And like, I don't really speak to people. I'm like, okay, why? Well, I'm nervous, I'm embarrassed. I'm like, okay, this is just part of it. Like you have to speak, and it's really counterintuitive, but the more you speak, the less nervous you become and the more confident you become.
When I go back to my professional life or my personal life and I'm speaking English, my confidence level is so much higher now. Sometimes, get that little social anxiety before a meeting starts. Now I'm like, I go into meetings and I'm like, bro, I'm speaking English. This is easy. Like, come on. Like, it's not even I don't even think about it. I never expected that. That's something that just happened. And I'm like, and I'm pretty early on in my language learning, and I'm already starting to see the benefit of that.
If you want to become conversationally fluent in Spanish as fast as possible, check out the Fluent Spanish Speaker Academy. Here's what some of our current members have to say. Caden, an NYU graduate, says, "You won't find a more committed teacher than Nate. His lessons provide students with a comprehensive set of vocabulary and skills to use long after you've completed the course. One of my students, Ewan, had a very important Spanish exam coming up, and he said, 'It's been a while since I've spoken to you, but just to let you know, I've done my Spanish speaking exam. It went really well, and I took your advice about speaking Spanish every day with someone, and it has really boosted my confidence in speaking Spanish comfortably, and I couldn't thank you enough for your help with that.' We stand behind our program with a 30-day full refund policy. If you're not happy within 30 days, we'll give you your money back, no questions asked. To find out if the Academy is right for you, click the link on the screen or in the description below." As you know, the preterite is a past tense we have in Spanish. And a lot of times students struggle with this idea of the preterite versus the imperfect. So I always tell students that the preterite is for one-time actions in the past. Here I have the little conjugation charts. These are for regular verbs. Accent marks are super important. So an example here is bailamos. If we say yo bailé, that means I danced. It wouldn't be I was dancing, right? I danced and it's done. Careful, because we also have in the present tense subjunctive, we have baile. It's different. So for example, if I said, she wants me to dance with her. Ella quiere que yo baile con ella. It would not be ella quiere que yo baile con ella. That's wrong. It's baile. So be aware of the accents there. Then we have siempre bailamos los lunes versus bailamos anoche. So the thing is, in the nosotros form, in the preterite, it's the same as it is in the present. So in the preterite, it's fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fueron, which can get kind of confusing. Sometimes the preterite and the imperfect can be it's a gray area sometimes. Sometimes you could say, well, yeah, but this was a one-time action. Or yeah, but this was ongoing. Like you and I had the conversation of la comida estuvo rica. It happened, it's done. Like, it's not continuing to be good. It was good and it's done. This is kind of where you can get to this gray area. Some native speakers will tell you, oh, but no, you'd say estuvo. Some will say, no, you use estaba. That's why, like you said, the trigger phrases are really important. Verbs that are naturally preterite, just because of the way they are verbs like casarse, salir, morir, llegar, decidir. So to get married, to leave or to go out, to die, to arrive, and to decide. These verbs are almost always preterite. Decidir could not be, and also llegar, but most times they are. Okay, so we've got, right, una vez, ayer, entonces, anoche. These are kind of the very popular ones. All the ones underlined are the ones that you most commonly hear. So it's really just sitting down and saying, cool, I'm gonna study these and then review them. And when you think about it, right, you say una vez. Okay, that is naturally a one-time thing. We've also got ayer, entonces, anoche. These are kind of things that happen once. Like last night, for example, anoche, it happened and it's done. It's not still going on. It finished because it's anoche.
This is kind of like if you were interrogating me and you said, what did you do yesterday? And I would say, I did this. And then I did this. It's just kind of an end, right? Like I did it, it's over.
Think about in English. If I said to you, hey, like, Mateo, what do you say more? I did or I was doing? You'd be like, I don't know. It just kind of depends. So it's the same thing here. It depends on what you're trying to say. So, if you want to say I did or I was doing, right? I did would be the preterite. I was doing would be the imperfect. So that is kind of like the difference. I wouldn't say one is used more than the other. It just depends on the certain situation, what you specifically are trying to say. If I'm telling you about what I did this morning, I would say, oh, me levanté, me lavé los dientes, tomé agua. Like these are all things in the preterite because I did them and they're done. It's not like I'd be like, oh, well, I feel like I'm using the preterite too much. Like, no, it all depends on what you're trying to say. Am I trying to say I drank water or I was drinking water?
In the very beginning when I was learning Spanish, it was the same exact thing with a ser and estar. And I'm like, okay, we got doctor or pop, all these different, I'm like, now, I want to say she is tall. Is that a permanent condition? Is it this? And now I don't even think about it. Exactly. I cannot wait until that happens because right now it's like, man, I really got to think about it.
Part of the process. As long as you can understand and accept that, then you'll be fine. Okay, so let's take a look now at the imperfect trigger phrases. So you've got like a menudo, a veces, siempre, very common, mucho, nunca, todo el tiempo. That would always happen. Like muchas veces, yo iba al cine con mi papá. Like I used to go with my dad like a lot of times. But once again, it comes back to the idea of like, what are you trying to say? Are you trying to say, I said, or are you trying to say, I was saying, or I used to say?
I've tried to avoid to switch to English as much as possible. Is this going to be imperfect or preterite? Just pick one and move on. And like from the context, like probably it will be understood. And if not, you can kind of clarify. Because I find myself very often, I am trying to get through a sentence and I'm like, oh, dang, I have to make that decision. And then I freeze and then I lose my train of thought. And then the conversation kind of halts and it gets awkward. It's like
while it might not necessarily be correct, I would say just if you're not sure preterite or imperfect, use the imperfect. I'm not saying that that's necessarily going to be correct in whatever situations you get yourself into, but at least you'll prevent yourself from getting all frozen up, be like, and then switching back to English. Or like if you don't know a certain word, for example, and this person happens to know English or maybe has a basic understanding of English, be like, how do you say bolsa or bag? How do you say bag? Oh, bolsa. Okay, yeah, thank you.
So I'm looking for some advice on, my wife can speak Spanish and English perfectly. I've told myself probably half a dozen times now, today's the day you're only speaking in Spanish moving forward. Every time it's failed. Because it gets to a point where, again, we get to that, I freeze and I can't think of it, switch to English. Do you have any techniques or advice as efficient or useful as possible?
Yeah, actually, that's exactly what I recommend. So I'll give you the example to me and my girlfriend because it's the exact same situation. She's trying to learn English and I speak obviously English natively and Spanish at a very high level. What we've been doing is you honestly just have to tell yourself like, hey, please like support me. Like every time I'm speaking to her in English, of course I understood, but I'm forcing her to speak to me in English. It's out of love, but I'm forcing her. I'm like, hey, if you really want to learn, I'm holding you accountable. Just like when you go to the gym with someone, you have someone to hold you accountable. Same thing. It's like, yeah, whatever. Like, okay, you can lift lighter weight, but like, if you want to get strong, you're going to lift heavy weight. So like, same idea. Hey, what'd you say? I don't understand what you're saying. And you're frustrated, like, oh, but then it forces you out of frustration to learn and get better and to be like, okay, how do you say this word? Or como se dice? Whatever. She'll be like, blah, blah, blah. You're like, great. And then you keep going in Spanish.
Very cool. Very good advice.
Mateo, muchísimas gracias. En serio, lo aprecio mucho. Tú has sido el primer invitado en este show. Entonces, muchas gracias, lo aprecio mucho.
Muchas gracias por invitarme y fue un placer. De nuevo, muchas gracias por toda tu ayuda.
And before we go, guys, I'd like to say, if you want to learn Spanish from me, you can go to my website, SpanishWithNate.com. And also, if you want to be in a video like this, click the link in the video description and you can apply. Muchas gracias. Gracias, Mateo. Adiós.